get an idea of what actually is protecting our home. And possibly if disaster strikes, what are we looking at in terms of a deductible to really help restore our home? So often over the past few years, as the insurance industry has evolved out here in the Midwest, it's becoming more prevalent with homeowners not knowing their deductibles, or really the insurance companies changing those deductibles on them. But really, especially with commercial properties, it really is knowing that policy, what they actually have. We've ran into some issues with churches in the past that they've had actually the wrong type of policy. So they've been on the hook for a lot more of the restoration costs than they anticipated. So that's our goal today. It should be a shorter segment. So the three items we're going to be speaking of is, one, what type of policy should we be looking to have? Two, really, what are the key things with deductibles? And three, maybe what's a good endorsement to have within our policy? That first item is going to be, what policy should we have when we look at it? Now, this is something you guys can maybe send an email, call your local agent. They can give you kind of a brief overview, or even mail you a hard copy of your policy, which we always advise homeowners to have. Especially on the public adjusting side, it's very handy if you do experience damage. Generally, a lot of public adjusters will give you a free policy review before having you endorse or sign a contract with them, because they want to understand, hey, are these items covered for you? Just in case, if not, they can't help you out in some ways. So the two type of policies, really coverage you should be looking for is going to be an RCV policy or an ACV policy. An RCV policy is replacement cost value. Generally, this is the most common for homeowners policies, and this is really what you should be striving to have. This is allowing you, if you experience damage, that they're going to cover pretty much what it costs to replace those items, as well as you have to subtract your deductible in that. The secondary was ACV. Now that means actual cash value. That is the actual today's cost to replace those items, very similar to RCV. However, you're going to subtract the depreciative total from that total replacement cost. Really, the easiest way to understand this would be consider auto insurance, because automobiles depreciate so rapidly, and it's very prevalent for a car to leave the lot and drop 30%. Think of it that way. The insurance on an ACV will write you a check, but they're going to subtract, hey, if this roof's 15 years, they're going to subtract 15 years of depreciation. We've actually ran into a lot of ACV policies with churches and commercial buildings of late. Generally, that's due to an oversight of board members or them being under the impression they've actually had an RCV policy. So as I said, as you reach out to your agent, that first item you should request is, hey, Mr. Agent, do I have an RCV policy? Because that really is critical, especially if you want to get indemnified or covered up to what it actually costs to replace those items. Now the secondary thing, and this has actually been one of the more alarming things in the insurance industry, has been the deductible. It's not like it was 20 years ago. You had your $500 deductible and you're happy with it. You pay your premiums monthly, and at the end of the day, I have a $500 deductible. The insurance industry, as well as brokers, have been a lot more sneaky. We've ran into some homeowners that were under the assumption they've had those $500, $1,000 deductibles, only to find out they're actually on the hook for 1% of their policy. This is very common with State Farm. A lot more policies are reading this way, that you're responsible for 1% of your policy. So, for example, say your house is valued at $250,000 for replacement. Your deductible would be 1% of that $250,000. So $2,500 is your deductible from the get-go, and then after you pay that, generally they'll pay out the sum for restoration, depending on that RCV policy or that ACV policy. Because a lot of the common deductibles in the years past have been $1,000, $250, some $500 as well. The reason a lot of the industry is moving this way is because in the last 10, 12 years, there's been such catastrophic disasters from hurricanes to hailstorms that they're trying to mitigate their loss, and they think this is a great way to do it. Increase their overall deductible will help offset claims, as well as help them keep some of that dollars. So keep an eye out there for that deductible, what you have. That's why, as I say, reach out to your agent. Check every year. I understand maybe they are the local agent. Just double check. It shouldn't do any harm. You're entitled to it. You're paying your premiums. This is something that should be acknowledged and notified for you if there is a change as well. We actually ran into a policy, I believe, last week pertaining to farmers insurance. The homeowner actually had a $500 deductible for interior damages, which were caused by wind and hail damage to the roof. But the roof actually had a separate deductible. That was at 1% of the policy that I mentioned. So a lot of these policies are getting a little more convoluted. Separate deductibles for separate restoration or separate rooms throughout the policy. So double check with your agent. Do your due diligence. As I said, spring's coming. The weather's going to start changing. If you live in the Panhandle, storm season might be coming. If you're in the Midwest, we just had a long, harsh winter. Storms are going to be coming in the next few months in terms of rain and strong winds. Now, the third item is going to be an endorsement. So endorsements are specific items that are either included or excluded throughout your policy. This one's going to be law and ordinance clause. This is really a key one for homeowners, especially commercial property owners and condo association boards. Because what this allows is coverage for items that actually will bring your house up to current building code. Okay? For instance, I live in a house that was built in 1970s. If something were to happen to this house, I can assure you a lot of my house is not up to code, building code of the 2018 standards. So while we're actually rebuilding my property, they would actually be bringing up-to-date electrical, things like that, framing, insulation, that are required by code. Some areas what are enforced by the municipality as well. So law and ordinance clause is key, okay, especially with today's ever-evolving products for whether it's roofing, siding, flooring as well. And really, it shouldn't be much more to your premium. It's really worth it at the end, okay? Because, you know, the reason for a policy is to protect yourself. Now, if you're a due diligence and savings, you're going to save for these repairs, you know, then maybe it's not something. But I advise you the $10 to $50 more it might add to your premiums is going to be worth it at the end of the day, okay? For instance, let's say you have wind and hail damage on your roof. Let's say shingles get removed. That wood decking that's underneath is that old 1x6 wood sheathing or even 2x4s, which we have seen in South Holland, Illinois. Per building code, that's not sufficient for a new roofing system, okay? Now, if you didn't have this clause, you would be responsible for the new plywood sheathing before you could put on that roof deck. And a lot of roofing contractors will not go back over those 2x4s or the 1x6 unless maybe they're not licensed or actually registered in the municipality. They're just out of the truck roofers. But per manufacturer, as well as per building code, the house needs to get redecked. And by having this clause, building code endorsement, which is law and ordinance clause, will allow you to really get that coverage. Because unless you have a couple $1,000s laying around, you know, it's really just not worth the hassle for you. All right. So our big top three is check what type of policy you have on your homeowner's policy. Is it an RCV policy or an ACV policy? What type of deductible do you have? Do you only have one, or do you have deductibles per line items throughout your home? That's a key question to ask. Lastly, do I have law and ordinance clause within my policy? especially with commercial property owners. If this includes you guys, this is key. I mean, a flat roof, we got to add make R49 insulation on top of the deck. This is really key. You could add value real quick in terms of making something. And I know the city of Chicago is becoming compliant with the 2018 building code. That's actually going to be getting mandated throughout, I believe, mid-year of the summer of 2019. So things like this are critical for you really to understand about your policy. This isn't something, hey, my policy's renewed, my premiums went down, I'm happy. Ask yourself, why are my premiums going down? Was there a change in my policy? Because if anything, my house only got older, or my vehicle is getting older. Really look at your homeowner's policy, very different than your auto policy. You really want to go through it, understand what it is, because a lot of times they exclude mold. So many people freak out about mold, all right? A lot of them freak out about wood. You know, I mentioned roof decking. They're going to cover it if the roof deck is not compliant with building code. Now, if your roof deck is damaged just due to being old and just deteriorating, that's considered part of the structure. If it's compliant with code, you're on the hook for those pieces of wood, okay? So just become educated. As we said, our big thing with you guys, we want to be transparent. We don't believe, going door to door, eating a deductible, and promising you the world. We've seen it too many times. We've also helped homeowners, max out policies, and they've actually just turned around and never did the work, okay? So we see both sides of it. Many of you guys won't see checks like this, $15,000 to $50,000 checks, especially with today's economy. It's very difficult, but we really advise you guys, be due diligent with your policy. Speak to your agent. I know more than likely they want to talk to you. They're always trying to find a reason to talk to you, whether it's to sell you life insurance or, add some sort of extra coverage on your vehicle. So reach out. They're out there to help you. If you have any questions, you could reach out to us. As I said, our website is trc-inc.com, or you could reach me at my personal email, philipgcooper@gmail.com. We'll gladly help you out, answer questions for you. But I'll repeat it one more time, the big three. Check what type of policy you have. Understand the type of deductible you have. And let's make sure we have law and ordinance clause in our policy. Guys, this could add at least $100 of value to you. You might say, hey, Phil, you're taking more money out of me at premium. I guarantee if your house qualifies for a building upgrade, you're going to be very happy at the end of the day. All right? Well, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Look forward to checking out questions or any concerns you have. As I said, we're working on getting that blog updated to involve some photos as well as notes that we've discussed on this podcast. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your guys' day.